Hi, I'm Dr. Heather Hirsch, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This week, I want to take you behind the scenes for the FDA Expert Menopause panel. You heard me right. If you didn't know, history was made on Thursday, July 17th. A group of expert clinicians and researchers got together to speak with senators in support of the safety of menopausal hormone therapy, both local vaginal hormone therapy and systemic hormone therapy, as well as testosterone. In this video, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of how we all got together and go through some of my favorite moments from the panel and react to them on the spot. Are you ready? Let's go. It was only a few weeks before the FDA panel was held that we knew we were asked to go speak. We all met several nights and weekends to discuss how we would put this panel together. Because remember, we did not have that much time. Each one of us as experts got together and spoke about what was really on our hearts. What were we most passionate about? For me, it was really just the safety of hormone therapy in general. It turns out that I actually kicked off the panel. That was really fun. I was really nervous before we started, but the whole thing actually went right according to plan. Let's get into why you're really here. Let's watch some of this together and I'll do some commentary. Let's go. Dr. Jim Simon is a professor of gynecology. He has published many peer-reviewed studies. He works in Washington, D.C. He's been the past president of the Menopause Society and ISHRT, the International Society for the Study of Women's Sexual Health. Let's hear what he has to say.
I'm going to speak specifically about the class label on local or low-dose vaginal estrogen products and freely admit that the FDA has a very complicated, oftentimes difficult balancing act in constructing a label that's understandable, that's straightforward, and that carefully and correctly balances risks and the benefits of a given product. I believe that in terms of the low-dose vaginal estrogen label, they have failed. The first is the label should be consistent not only with the product and the data presented on the product to the FDA, but also consistent with the scientific literature. You've heard some comments to this effect. We presume it has to go from the vagina into the blood and jump to the brain, the heart, the breast, etc. That's logical, or to me it's logical, but in fact, it doesn't do that. It just doesn't do that. And when you measure estrogen as a result of placing these low-dose vaginal estrogen products in the vagina, you cannot measure them in the blood.
Oh, I love this point from Dr. Simon. Did you hear him say, it just doesn't do that? And he's right. What he is saying is vaginal estrogen products, so that's gonna be your creams, estrace and Premarin cream, that's gonna be your suppositories, Vagifem and Uvifem, which carry this boxed warning that incorrectly says it's going to go through your body and increase the risk for heart attacks, cancers, and strokes is simply not true. Quote, it just doesn't do that. And how do we know that? Research shows us over and over and over again that these medications do not travel into the bloodstream. We do not see these numbers when we check blood levels of women on these medications. So what he's saying is it just doesn't do that. These medications do not travel into the body. Therefore, there is no increased risk of heart attacks, cancers, and strokes. Let's get to the next one.
Now let's turn to another issue, death. Death attributable to avoiding estrogen. By age 50, half women in the United States have reached menopause. A third of the women in the United States have had a hysterectomy by age 50. In 2011, WHI reported, quotes, women aged 50 to 59 who received conjugated equine estrogen compared to women who received placebo had 12 fewer myocardial infarctions and 13 fewer deaths per 10,000 women. These WHI women who died were all under the age of 70. More recent WHI reports of data for women aged 50 to 59 receiving estrogen only show an all-cause decrease in mortality of 32%, with decrease in mortality due to cardiovascular disease, hip fracture, breast and colon cancer, yes, decrease in the women who took estrogen. And the octopus is so interesting. This is an organism that has lasted for 600 million years. 600 million years ago, the octopus discovered estradiol. It was the very first steroid to evolve in the course of history. And it put the estradiol to work. The octopus is made up mostly of brains and hearts. 9 brains, 3 hearts. No breasts to worry about, no skeleton to worry about, no skin to worry about. The octopus just makes its way in the world with what it's got. But what it's got is something that oils the system, that connects the circulatory system and the nervous system and keeps them working together. Well, through the course, for example, by inducing nitric oxide in the octopus, estradiol enables it to have facial recognition. It'll memorize your face, and when you come back again, it will come to you because it knows you. And that's enabled by the nitric oxide induced by the estradiol.
Next up is Dr. Phil Sorrell. He's actually such a great friend of mine. He's a professor emeritus at Yale. What he is saying here is really important. Estrogen is the master regulator. Do you know what that means? It means exactly what it sounds. Estrogen impacts every cell in the female body from head to toe. And what he is saying here is it has such an impact on the brain. Now, why is this so important? Because we know that the brain stem is actually where vasomotor symptoms, i.e. hot flashes, develop. So there you have it. Even the most obvious of menopausal symptoms starts in the brain. He then goes on to mention things like mood disruption, irritability, and brain fog, all of which having a major impact in the brain. Estrogen is the master regulator. And what he's trying to say is, therefore, how can the master regulator be unsafe? Particularly when we have a plethora of data to show that menopausal hormone therapy in certain doses, routes, and formulations is very, very safe. So thanks, Dr. Phil Sorrell, for all of your amazing information.
Testosterone's stereotype is that it's just for libido. It's a half-truth. It's a neurohormone, critical for mitochondria, nerve function, muscle, bone, and brain function. Libido improves because dopamine and blood flow in the brain improve. The FDA has rejected 2 attempts at female-dose testosterone, not because the products didn't work, but because they cited insufficient safety data, a legacy of the WHI backlash. But testosterone has been used in women since the 1940s, and trans men receive 10 times the dose. What other drug do we have where we give people 10 times the dose for 50 years and publish it, and then we're still asking if it's safe? Meanwhile, male testosterone products were approved with just 6 months of safety data. New data shows more women can come off their SSRIs by adding testosterone than by just using estrogen alone. 4 countries, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the UK, have government-approved female-dose testosterone, but only for low sexual desire. That forces women to justify treatment based upon sexual function, an already stigmatized issue that insurance often doesn't cover. Approve it for hypogonadism, not low desire. Work with the DEA to declassify low-dose testosterone for women. The Olympic doping scandals of the 1980s shouldn't dictate hormone access in 2025.
Up next, my good friend and colleague, Dr. Kelly Casperson. She's a board-certified urologist, and she has spent the last several years becoming an expert in sexual medicine and testosterone. She has a world-famous podcast and book, You Are Not Broken, where she investigates researchers in many different specialties and fields about women's sexual health and testosterone. What she says on the FDA panel is so important. She says in 4 other countries, but not the United States, testosterone is approved for low sexual desire. Now, why is this important? It's not FDA approved for women in the United States. And this is a really big problem because she's saying women have to justify their rationale in using testosterone. And here is where another important piece lies. Dr. Casperson goes on to talk about all of the research that shows that testosterone in low doses may be extremely beneficial to mood, to brain health and brain functioning, to bones, and more. So there is no approved testosterone for women in the United States, despite it being approved in 4 other countries. That is one thing we can work on. And number 2, we need more research so that we really know what testosterone implications are and how it can help support women through menopause and perimenopause.
I'm a practicing fellowship-trained double-board orthopedic surgeon and clinical researcher in musculoskeletal aging. And before that, I served women at the bedside as a cancer nurse. So I've been taking care of women for nearly 30 years. And in these 30 years, I've probably taken care of 100,000 people as a physician. And so looking 100,000 people in the eye gives me a deep sense of what they need and their suffering. suffering because of a condition, osteoporosis, that is largely preventable. There are approximately 80 million women in this country over 40, and up to 40% of them will develop osteoporosis. This is a rate 4 times that seen in men and occurs 10 years earlier than in men. And osteoporosis is not just the slow, steady state decline seen with aging. This, according to the Endocrine Society, is a sharp, precipitous drop in bone quality where we lose 15 to 20% of our bone density in the 5 to 7 years surrounding our perimenopause. 1/2 of women with osteoporosis will sustain an osteoporotic fracture, 1 in 2. The minute she breaks her hip, she has a 30% risk of dying in 1 year from the complications of hip fracture, and she has a 50% chance of never returning to pre-fall function. When I met Miriam in the emergency room, she had simply fallen in her kitchen. And when we do not have estrogen, we break down bone at a much higher rate. According to the NIH consensus statement and the European Foundation for Osteoporosis and Bone Disease, estrogen is the only well-established intervention to reduce the frequency of osteoporosis fracture in postmenopausal women to the tune of 30 to 50%, and the WHI itself found a 33% decline in fracture.
Up next is Dr. Vonda Wright. She is also a friend and colleague, and she has spent decades taking care of women because before she became a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, she was an oncology nurse at the bedside. And what she says here is crucial. The minute a woman has an osteoporotic fracture, she has a 30% risk of dying in the next year. This is so significant when it comes to women's health because estrogen is so protective against osteoporosis. When hormone therapy stopped being prescribed after the Women's Health Initiative scared clinicians and women alike, the rates of osteoporosis, the economic burden from osteoporosis has skyrocketed. So one of the reasons we got this panel together and why there's so many different specialties all represented here at this table is because estrogen impacts so many different organ systems in the female body. And when menopausal hormone therapy has that box label warning removed, it will help clinicians and women feel less afraid to use it. And this is important because bone health is crucial.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this life's honor to advocate for change. Science evolves, and so must our warning labels. I'm Dr. Rachel Rubin. I'm a urologist and one of the few fellowship trained in sexual medicine. This guideline-supported fact says that we can prevent more than 50% of people's urinary tract infections with local vaginal hormones, and we have known this for decades. So why haven't you heard of this before? Because your doctor doesn't know this either. And because, my friends, women's health has a marketing problem. UTIs, by the way, don't just mess with the quality of your life. They kill the people you love, a lot of people. And it costs us taxpayers a lot of money. UTIs cost 7 million hospital visits a year and make up 25% of infections in older adults. There is not a single study in the literature that says local vaginal estrogen causes stroke, blood clots, heart attacks, breast cancer, or probable dementia, which is what your box says.
Up next is also my friend and colleague, Dr. Rachel Rubin. She's a urologist and sexual medicine specialist. She completed a sexual medicine fellowship and has also published many papers. She also recently worked with the American Urologic Association on the importance of local vaginal estrogen when it comes to treating recurrent urinary tract infections and vaginal dryness and painful intercourse. What she's saying here is absolutely true. Vaginal estrogen saves lives, and without it, women have increased risk for recurrent urinary tract infections. What does that mean? Every time a woman has an infection and she's treated with antibiotics, she's more likely to grow resistant to that antibiotic. And when she gets an infection where all the antibiotics don't work anymore, she's likely to die. As an internal medicine specialist, when I was training and in the ICU, I saw women die from this, and it's called urosepsis. She goes on to talk about how her mother was also in the ICU, very sick, and when she was hospitalized, she had to fight for her mother to get vaginal estrogen in the hospital. Vaginal estrogen saves lives, period, and is categorically safe for all women. There's so much more to break down, and if you want a part 2, let me know, because there were so many highlights from this panel. But there's one more thing I wanted to tell you from behind the scenes. It was really important to me during the question and answer section that I got to say one more point that I didn't get in my first 5 minutes, and that is this. I don't believe that all women must take menopausal hormone therapy, but I do believe that all women deserve all the facts without the fears and without the stigma. Women deserve clear facts, and this is really crucial because the facts are not even right on the box label warning, which is why we're so passionate about it being removed from local vaginal estrogen and hopefully from systemic menopausal hormone therapy. All women deserve to pick the journey that's right for them, but demystifying the myths and the outdated data is something that's crucially important to me. And lastly, we need more clinicians and healthcare professionals who are trained when it comes to the safety and efficacy of FDA-approved menopausal hormone therapy. Now, if you're a clinician, I have an incredible course. I will link it in the description below because I've had over 2,000 clinicians take this course and say it absolutely changed their lives and up-leveled their professional careers. But it's important that all clinicians who are taking care of women in their midlife know about the impacts of the loss of that master regulator hormone. Now, I hope this was helpful and I hope you learned a lot. If you want a part 2, let me know in the comments what was your favorite part, and let's hope that the FDA is going to continue to support the removal of the box label warning and show their support of the safety of menopausal hormone therapy so that more women can get treated appropriately. All right, guys, I'll see you next week for a brand new video. Bye, everyone.